Greetings. My name is Justin Jones-Fosu, author and speaker, and I have the awesome privilege to interview Janice Litvin about her newest book, Banish Burnout Toolkit. And we're going to dive in to find out practical ways and strategies to reduce stress, no matter who you are, no matter where you are. So Janice, I'm super pumped to talk with you. And so first of all, welcome, very much welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I'm really passionate about is why, right? And so, my last book was focused on understanding our why and whatever we do. And so I'm just curious to know for you, why did you write Banish Burnout Toolkit? What was your motivation? What was your reasoning? What was that underlying urge to write this book?
Thank you. That's an excellent question. It's a pretty long answer, but I'll try to make it succinct. It all began when a client called me a couple of years ago and said, "Can you do a presentation about stress? But we don't want your typical mundane mindfulness, nutrition, fitness, although all those points are important. They wanted to go deeper." And I was like, yes, let's go deep. And so I created this workshop. And by the way, I had 3 weeks notice. So I created this workshop based on my studies of cognitive behavior therapy. And I had done a lot of research in earlier years. I had taken a lot of psychology classes, and I had gone back to school to study exercise science, which included the psychology. And of course, that was my favorite part. And so I created this class based on the premise that everyone can change their behavior in reaction to stress. And so I created this program, and every time I did this workshop, I was writing longer and longer and longer handouts. And finally, one day I said, I should write this as a book. So that was the genesis of the Banish Burnout Toolkit.
Wow. It's always great when you are able to find things that come from just your everyday helping people. And so,
Yes.
just kind of focusing on helping people, you talk about 6 tools, and I'm curious to know, which of the tools is your favorite? I know this is a really challenging question. It's like for those who have kids, it's like asking which kid is your favorite, but like which tool,
Yeah.
which tool is your favorite? Why?
That's funny. You're right. Of course, all my tools are my favorite, but I guess my favorite tool that I want to talk about today is the first tool, which is Stop and Audit. And the reason it's my favorite is because it's the easiest change that you can start working on today. You have to download a free chapter of the book. So the first tool is called Stop and Audit. Stop stands for stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. So when you're in the midst of negative thoughts, and that could be when you're fighting traffic or in a long line, or when you're having a disagreement with someone at work, before you say something you regret and you feel the heat rising up above you inside your body, you can stop, pause, take a breath, observe what your mind is doing, put control back to your prefrontal cortex, your rational executive functioning, and then proceed. And to take the observe part one step further, I created something called a stress audit. So you can look at how you typically react to stress physiologically. Sometimes our heart races, some people get knots in their stomach, sweaty palms, etc. And then you write down what happened, how you reacted physically, verbally, emotionally, how upset did you get, and what, if any, addictive behavior did you engage in? So that's Stop and
Wow.
Audit. Tool number 1.
Wow. That's a favorite kid. I like that kid. Amazing tool. One of the things that comes to mind, part of my focus and research is around diversity and inclusion,
Yes.
and just how do we make this diversity and inclusion a part of our everyday lives versus a big mandate and big initiative, but just a part of our mindset. So I'm curious to know from you, like, so even just hearing about tool number 1, it feels like that could be really practical as relates to applying it to engaging with those of us that are different, or being in stressful situations, talking about stressful things. Is that tool or any of the other tools that you would recommend for people to have conversations around diversity and inclusion of difference and or challenging conversations to have that may rise their stress levels?
You know, it's funny that I'm glad you brought that up. Diversity and inclusion is extremely important at work and at home and everywhere else. We were just having that conversation last night around the dinner table. What makes people not appreciate other types of people, whether it's a bias against religion, skin color, or people from a different country, is we don't know the person. We're afraid of our differences. And there are so many issues that separate us. And so my recommendation would be, why not get to know the person? Why not really get deeply involved in who the other person is? Let's open up our world, first of all, to which will help with our social lives, which is another part of banishing burnout. Loneliness is a huge issue in the workplace these days. And even now, with quarantining, people who live alone, especially the first several months, and people in New York City and Boston and San Francisco and places like that, where it was so much easier to catch the virus, there were people that would call me and say, I haven't had a hug in 3 months. It's really, really important to stay connected in whatever way you can, Zoom, or take a social distance walk with somebody outside. So it's important to get to know the other person, what makes them think, asking questions, being emotionally intelligent and empathetic to what other people are experiencing.
Wow, that's a great answer and a great way to really dive into the aspects of diversity inclusion. I mean, because in a nutshell, it's a sense of belonging. People want to feel like they belong no matter who they are, what they represent, or how they identify. So just speaking of a kind of identification, one of the things that comes to mind that there's a lot of books on stress and relieving stress and dealing with stress. What makes your book unique, different, and one that really stands out that someone would say, hey, you know what? This is one that will rise to the top for me.
Thank you. That's another excellent question. Based on my research as I was preparing to write the book, I realized that a lot of people are focused on, like I said earlier, mindfulness, meditation, exercise, nutrition. All those aspects and activities are very important. But where my book picks up, where most books don't go, is deep within. The only way to really, really manage stress is to learn to change the way you react in the first place. And the only way to do that is to go deep. In chapter 3, or tool number 3, which is called Unpack Your Emotional Baggage, a lot of people come to work with emotional baggage, which means they haven't resolved the issues from their past. Now, that past could be childhood, or it could be a prior job. Some people carry issues around from one place to the other. And the way you can tell if you are carrying around baggage or someone else at work is when their behavior seems a little out of character with what you would consider healthy behavior. And by that, I mean, let's say you're talking to someone and you give them a constructive critique and they overreact and like, oh my God, Justin, you should be careful the way you talk to people and criticize people. And my point is, and I've had that happen where someone and I were working on something together and I gave her a gentle suggestion and she flipped out. And I thought to myself, this person is hanging on to some unresolved issues. And this is very important for you people who are, for all of us, but especially for managers. When you see an employee exhibiting aberrant behavior, it's time to do something. Take them aside privately. When we get back to quote normal, take them out for coffee, go for a walk with them and say, I see your behavior is a little bit different. Is everything okay? What can I do to help you? Would you like to talk to somebody in the EAP department, or what can we do to help you get what you need? Is somebody at home sick? What's going on? How's Billy? I know Billy plays baseball on the weekends. Did he hurt his leg? What's going on with your family?
Wow. Those are
Which
really good questions.
includes, and there was built into there a few different issues. Knowing the names of the 2 most important people in every employee's life is a real key to emotional intelligence for the managers.
That's a great suggestion. Action step. If you do not know the names of the 2 most important people, listen to Janice. She has given us that great information. And Janice, speaking of great information, one of the things that 2020 provided for us and has kind of launched us into 2021 is a deeper emphasis on self-care. So can you talk about how Banish Burnout Toolkit really launches people to do better and taking care of themselves?
You know, it only takes 5 or 10 minutes a day to take care of ourselves. And I'm being a little slightly facetious. What I mean by that is if something did happen during the day that was upsetting, take 5 or 10 minutes to work the stress audit. When you write, and by the way, I know many people don't like to write with a pen and paper, and they've taken out long form handwriting out of the school system. I don't know why, but I encourage every parent to teach their child to write script. But if you can write with a pen and paper, Daniel Pink says that you don't know what's going to come out until you start writing. And there are other authors who talk about that as well. Writing down how you feel brings out other issues that you have deeper in your subconscious. Like, for example, one day I was sneezing and I didn't feel well, and a friend was over and she said, "Oh, do you have allergies?" And I got really angry. I said, "No, I don't have allergies." And I had to look at myself and understand, why did that upset me? And from the experience of writing, I remembered that when my father was on his last legs, I was sick and I wanted to fly home to Texas. And I had this cold. So I went to the doctor and I said, "I need an antibiotic. I got to get home." She said, "Oh, you probably just have allergies." So I didn't realize how loaded that comment was because I was hanging on to it from the past. And that's one of the keys to unpacking emotional baggage is the stuff, you get the stuff up and out, and then it doesn't hold that power over you.
Wow. One second. Let me write that down. It's a pen and paper. No, so I mean, you talked about your number one tool that you really, tool number one. Can you go through the other 5 tools
Sure,
that you didn't mention, and just a
sure,
quick synopsis of how they can benefit the everyday person?
sure. So we talked about tool number 1, stop and audit. Tool number 2 is learning what the typical stress reactions are. The basic ones are overreaction and overgeneralization. So overreaction is, "Oh my God, my car won't start. Now I need a new car." Well, is that really true? Or is it just maybe the battery is dead or whatever's going on in the motor and you just need to go to the repair shops? So that's an example of overreacting. Overgeneralizing, an example of that is the service at that restaurant is always terrible. Well, is it really always terrible, or is it just tonight somebody called in sick and they're short staffed? So first of all, recognizing what the typical stress reactions are, then we put a reality spin on them so that we can learn to calm ourselves down and, like I said, put control back to the prefrontal cortex. So all of that is tool number 2. Tool number 3 is digging into our emotional baggage, which I just illustrated a moment ago. Tool number 4 is about self-care, physical self-care, meaning obviously healthy eating, sleep, nutrition, taking a walk, getting out in the sun. Tool number 5 is setting healthy boundaries, another big important thing to learn. Basically, it's learning how to say no with respect. And tool number 6 is about finding an accountability buddy because, like I said earlier, we don't want people to isolate. We want people to have someone at work to share ideas with, maybe role play some difficult conversations you have to have, and just help each other staying on track.
Oh, oh, oh! It's amazing to see the practical aspects of this book. And one of the things I think that makes you unique in writing this book is the combination of your passion, your experience, and your expertise. So how has your expertise prepared you to write a book that is not only inspiring, but also very practical for people?
Well, that's an interesting question as well. It all started during the recession when I had to figure out something else to do. I had been a technology recruiter for 20 plus years, so I knew a lot about human behavior and helping people, but I hadn't really focused on self-care and wellness. So when there's a recession and you have nothing to do, what should you do? And I'm sure you'll agree with me, Justin, that's the time to go to the gym, take care of our
Yes.
bodies, practice some self-care. So that's what I, right? That's what I did. I went to the gym. I found Zumba fitness. I became a Zumba instructor. And the week that I got trained by our founder, Beto Perez, was the same week I reached my goal weight in Weight Watchers. So that was a big experience for me, a
Wow.
very meaningful experience for me. So I began to teach Zumba. I love teaching Zumba, but I realized I really want more out of my work. And so I went back to school to study exercise science. I alluded to this earlier. We learned physiology, anatomy, nutrition, and psychology, as well as how to develop exercise programs. So I began speaking about fitness and intrinsic motivation, which for those who don't know means learning to find pleasure from within. The good feelings you feel after you exercise, you feel happy because you've released endorphins. You might feel
Mhm.
some dopamine because you've gone for a walk with a friend. So finding those and focusing on those, and the pride that you feel from having taken a walk, all of that is spells intrinsic motivation. So all of that added up together meant that I could now go on my quest to get more involved with workplace wellness. As I said, I loved the psychology piece, and I had already read some books about cognitive behavior therapy. And I realized that in my own life, I had already used it to help me change my behavior around food, but I didn't know it was called cognitive behavior therapy. So all of that added up to becoming who I am today.
Wow, it sounds like CBT, not to be confused with CBD.
Yeah,
So cognitive
right,
behavior
right.
therapy. Awesome.
That's
So
right.
if I ask you one last question before kind of finding a way for people to find out more information about the book, is like in 5 years, right? If somebody read your book and they went through your workshop, they brought you in to speak, they did all these things. 5 years from that moment, what's different about that person?
Wow, very insightful question. What's different about that person is that they're not taking things so personally when someone is rude to them, because unfortunately there are people who are rude. Learning that instead of getting defensive, here let me sum it up in a nutshell. Let's say you're at the grocery store and you can't find something you know is there. Like I went to find a gift card and I was getting really angry because I was tight on time, and I could hear the tapes playing in my head. Oh my gosh, these people are so stupid. How could they be so disorganized? They told me they had this such and such gift card. Now I'm going to have to walk all the way to the front. I'm going to be late, blah, blah, blah. As I was walking, this is a true story. As I was walking to the front of the store, I caught myself in the act of overreacting. And I said to myself, does this situation warrant this degree of anger? I don't
Hmm.
think so. No one's in the hospital. No one's broken their legs. No one is in a serious situation at home. Everything is okay in my life. Now, I challenge you. I had this conversation with myself. I challenge you to go to the front of the store and smile and say to the clerk that's helping you, how is your day going? And not make it all
Hmm.
about me. Spread the love and spread the cheer. So that is how my life has changed, that I've learned how to stop in the middle of an overreaction. It's normal human behavior to react when we're stressed out. But now what I've done is I've added a layer of control over our behavior. You know, we can't control everything around us. The only thing we
Hmm.
can control is ourselves. So I've learned to take control of myself and my behavior, which, by the way, in my 20s was extreme. And I've learned to stop, observe my behavior, and then move on and change my outlook right then and there, and tell myself, you have the ability to be happy, you have the ability to smile, and you have the ability to be nice to the other people around you.
Wow. I mean, that's very insightful, especially since you're only 10 years removed from your extreme 20s. Janice, do you mind sharing? Do you mind sharing how people can find out more information about the book, where they can buy the book, where they can
Sure.
go to find out more about you and your workshop? Uh, I like that.
So there it is, the Banish Burnout Toolkit. You can actually download a free chapter of the book by going to janicelitvin.com/book. scroll down to the bottom and there will be a form where you can put in your name and email address and get the first chapter. And you can email me, janice@janicelitvin.com, for more information about how to engage me to come to your organization and teach people all these lessons that I'm talking about today, how to change their behavior in reaction to stress. And I want to thank you so much, Justin, for that very, very thoughtful interview.
Absolutely. We try our best to enjoy life, but also provide practical strategies for people to live and work meaningfully. So thank you so much, Janice Litvin, the author of Banish Burnout Toolkit, and super, super excited to offer practical strategies to help you deal with stress in work and in life. Thanks so much, Janice, and have an amazing day.
Thank you, Justin.